Okay, imagine this. You've got to write just one sentence answering the question, who are you?
Uh-huh.
Not like your name or how old you are, but really, who are you? Deep down, what would you write?
Huh. Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? Sounds simple, but it's actually, well, pretty complex.
Totally. Defining yourself, not easy.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're taking the material you sent over, and our mission really is to unpack how that identity gets formed, how it's influenced, and yeah, how it gets challenged as you go through life.
We're basically trying to figure out the forces that make you, well, you.
Right.
And to kick that off, we probably need a baseline. Like, what are we even talking about when we say identity? What's the definition we're working with from the sources?
Good starting point. The
Uh,
sources give us a solid working definition. They say identity is the combination of your specific traits, your values, and the different roles you play. Yeah, like being a student or a friend or a daughter or a gamer, all
Yeah.
those things. It's kind of the whole package of how you see yourself and maybe how others see you too.
Gotcha. And the building blocks for that package? Wow, there are a lot.
Hmm.
The sources list things like your family, your heritage, the culture and traditions you grew up with,
Hmm.
even the languages you speak.
And don't forget the internal stuff. Your personal values, what you believe in, your hobbies, your talents.
Oh, and the groups you hang out with, your friends, your teams, clubs, all that social stuff.
It really is kind of everything all rolled into this concept that's, well, it's always shifting a bit.
Which brings us right to that big question the sources want us to keep in mind, right?
Exactly. The foundational question is this: is identity fixed? Like set in stone when you're born? Or is it something that can actually grow and, change over time?
Okay, interesting. So hold on to your first thought on that one.
Hmm.
Is it fixed or does it change? We'll circle back.
Definitely. Keep that in your back pocket as we look at what actually influences identity.
All right, let's unpack that. If identity isn't fixed, then something must be pushing and pulling on it, right?
Hmm.
What are the heavy hitters, the main forces?
Yeah, and what's interesting is how universal these seem to be. The source material lays out the main categories pretty clearly. It starts, unsurprisingly, with your environment.
Environment, like nature.
Well, yes, but broader.
Yeah.
It includes the really fundamental stuff like your family upbringing and the expectations they have, but also the bigger picture, the society you live in, your country, the actual physical place around you.
Okay, so family, society, country.
Yeah.
What else?
Culture is huge.
Yeah.
Traditions, celebrations, maybe even the food you eat, all those things that connect you to a history or a group.
Right, the stuff that feels like home.
Exactly. And then there's the day-to-day stuff, your
Mhm.
education, what happens at school, and definitely your peer groups.
Friends. Yeah, they have a massive impact, don't they?
Huge. Think about who you spend most of your waking hours with outside of home. It's often those peers. And then, especially now, we absolutely have to include media, technology, and like global connections, the internet, social media.
Oh, yeah, that's got to be a game changer compared to like 50 years ago.
Totally. It exposes you to so many ideas and influences way beyond your town or even your country.
Hmm.
It's the difference between learning about the world from one book versus, well, having 1,000 worlds in your pocket.
That connects perfectly to this really cool stretch question the sources had about environment. It makes you think about how powerful location is.
Which one was that?
It asked how someone's identity might be different growing up in, say, rural Newfoundland compared to someone growing up right in downtown Toronto.
Oh, that's a great comparison. It highlights the environmental impact perfectly.
So how would it be different?
Well, think about rural Newfoundland. Your community might be smaller, really tight-knit. Your identity could be deeply connected to things like resilience, maybe fishing, or local traditions passed down generations.
Knowing your neighbors, relying on each other,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
exactly. Local knowledge could be a huge source of pride. Your social capital, what makes you respected, might come from being dependable, knowing the history, being part of that close community fabric.
Okay, now flip that. Downtown Toronto.
Totally different world, right?
Yeah.
Dense city living, constant change. You're bumping into dozens of different cultures and languages every single day.
Yeah, way more anonymous, maybe.
In some ways, your identity there might be shaped more by navigating all that diversity, being maybe more tech savvy, perhaps focusing on a very specific skill or career path early on.
And your social groups are probably way bigger, maybe more online, changing more often.
Probably. And your social capital might come less from local tradition and more from being adaptable, maybe having a broader, more global perspective.
So the environment basically sets the menu of what's normal or valued.
That's a great way to put it. Your location, the society it fosters.
Right.
It really determines which parts of your potential identity get amplified, and maybe which parts get kind of pushed aside.
Wow. Okay, so if the environment shapes us that much, what happens when different parts of that environment or different parts of us start clashing? That sounds stressful.
It definitely can be. And that leads us right into what the sources call the challenge zone.
Challenge zone. Sounds ominous.
Huh. Well, it just means identity isn't always straightforward. It often involves conflict, especially when you're younger, figuring things out.
Makes sense. What are the main challenges the material points out?
One of the biggest and probably most relatable is peer pressure.
Ugh, yeah, a classic.
Right. The sources say it can push you to hide parts of yourself or even change who you are just to fit in, just to feel like you belong.
Okay, but wait. How is that different from just, adopting stuff your friends like? Like if everyone starts wearing a certain brand and you do too, is that pressure or just influence?
That's a really smart question. It comes down to choice or agency. Influence is often more like adoption. You choose to wear the brand because you genuinely like it, or you admire the group, or you want to signal you're part of it. Pressure feels more like coercion. It's when you feel you have to change something fundamental, maybe hide a core belief or part of your family background because you're afraid of being rejected or made fun of if you don't.
Ah, okay. So influence is more like I want to, and pressure is more like I have to or else.
That's a pretty good way to think about it. The or else is key, the fear of negative consequences.
Got it. What else is in the challenge zone?
The digital world comes up big time,
Yeah.
social media specifically.
What does that play in?
It's tricky because it can do both things. It can actually strengthen your self-image sometimes.
Yeah.
You can find online communities of people who share super niche interests that maybe nobody understands where you live.
Yeah. You find your people online.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it can also seriously challenge your self-image. There's the constant comparison to others, often really idealized versions of others.
The perfect vacation pics, the perfect grades. Yeah.
Exactly. Plus, everything you put online can feel kind of permanent, open to judgment from anyone, anytime. That creates a different kind of pressure, a pressure to perform, maybe?
Perform. Like put on an act.
Sort of. Curate an image that isn't quite the whole you. And that relates to another challenge the sources mention, belonging to multiple groups with different values.
Oh, yeah. Like your family expects one thing, your friends expect another. Maybe your sports team expects something else entirely.
Precisely. Maybe your family values modesty, but your online friends value being really outspoken. Or your culture emphasizes community, but your school emphasizes individual achievement.
And you're stuck in the middle trying to figure out who to be in each situation.
Exactly. You end up having to kind of switch between different versions of yourself, which ties into this idea of the public versus the private self.
How so?
The material points out that who you are at home can be quite different from who you are out in public, especially at school or with friends. School is often the first big place where you have to define yourself a bit more independently from your parents.
Right. You're testing the waters, figuring out who you are when mom and dad aren't right there.
You got it. You're outside the harbor of the family unit, as you said.
So, thinking about all that pressure, online and offline, the sources had a really direct discussion question. Let me ask it to you, the listener. Let's be real here. What do you think is genuinely harder right now? Being totally yourself in front of your friends, like face to face, or being totally yourself when you're online?
It's a good one to pause on.
Yeah, think about it. Why might one feel harder than the other?
Maybe think about the stakes. In person, the reaction is immediate. Yeah, you see it on their faces, good or bad, but maybe it passes quickly.
Okay. And online.
Online, you can maybe craft your image more carefully, edit yourself, but then that edited version sticks around. It's out there. Maybe the judgment feels less direct, but potentially longer lasting or wider reaching.
It's definitely different kinds of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And navigating that difference, that split between maybe a home self and a public self or an online self, that's actually a huge part of growing up. It forces you to start figuring out what you really think, separate from what everyone else wants you to be.
Which sounds exhausting, but also necessary.
Absolutely necessary for developing a strong sense of self. So, okay, we've talked about influences and challenges. How do we actually process all this stuff? How do we make sense of our own identity journey?
This is where I thought the source material was really practical. It didn't just describe the problem. It gave actual tools for self-reflection.
Yeah, the exercises are great.
I like the first one, the sort of analytical task. It asks you to start with the sentence stem. Who am I? I am influenced by. And then write like 4-6 sentences describing those influences.
And crucially, it tells you which influences to make sure you include, right?
Yeah, you got to mention family, culture, friends, the media, and importantly, your own personal choices.
That personal choices part is key. It acknowledges your agency in the process.
Totally. But the real kicker, the part that makes it more than just a list, is the challenge. Give at least one specific example of how your identity has changed over time.
Ah, yeah. That moves it from just what I am to how I got here and where I might be going. It forces you to see it as a process, not a fixed snapshot.
Exactly. Thinking chronologically.
But if writing isn't really your thing...
Then there's the creative option. I love this idea. The sources suggest making an identity web or even designing your own personal crest, like a coat of arms, but for you.
Yeah. This shifts it from words to images, which can be super powerful. You'd fill your crest with symbols.
Symbols representing what?
Things like your core values, maybe symbols from your culture, things representing languages you speak, maybe even a personal motto or a quote that sums up your philosophy.
That sounds really cool, actually. A visual map of you.
It is, and they add an extra challenge here too, which ties right back into that conflict zone we discussed.
What's the extra challenge?
Use your crest, your visual, to show how two different parts of your identity might sometimes clash or be in tension.
Oh, interesting. So put the conflicting parts right next to each other on the crest.
Exactly. Maybe you have a symbol for your love of science, like a beaker, but right next to it is a symbol for your love of art, like a paintbrush. How do those two parts of you interact? Do they compete for your time? Do they inspire each other?
Ah, I see. It's like visualizing the internal tug of war.
Precisely. And seeing it visually can be a real aha moment. It helps you realize that feeling conflicted isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It just means you're a complex person with multiple facets.
That feels healthier. Like, it's okay to be pulled in different directions sometimes. Managing that tension is part of being human.
That's exactly the point. Identity isn't about achieving perfect harmony. It's about learning to navigate those competing interests and values. And that navigation is growth.
Which leads perfectly to the main takeaway, the big conclusion from all the source material.
Right. If there's one thing to remember, it's this. Identity is not fixed. It's not static.
It grows, it changes.
It's constantly being shaped by the choices you make, the people you meet, the experiences you have. It's an ongoing project, really. A lifelong one.
Wow. Okay, so let's recap this deep dive a bit. We started by trying to define identity, that mix of traits, values, roles. Then we looked at the huge forces shaping it. Especially environment, comparing somewhere like rural Newfoundland to downtown Toronto, showed that really clearly.
Yeah, the context matters so much.
And we dove into the tricky parts,
Yeah.
the challenges, like peer pressure, dealing with multiple groups, and navigating that whole online versus offline self.
Plus, we looked at tools to help you reflect on all the writing exercise, the personal crest, ways to actually map out your own identity.
So if we zoom out, what's the bigger picture here? Why does understanding our own complex identity matter beyond just, ourselves?
Well, the sources connect it directly to community. Think about it. A community, a school, even a country. It's made up of all these unique individuals, right? Yeah.
Each person brings their own identity, their own crest, their own internal conflicts and strengths. And it's that collection, that mix of identities that creates diversity, that sparks new ideas, that builds connections. Our individual identities are what give a community its unique flavor and perspective.
So understanding ourselves helps us understand how we fit into the bigger group.
And how the group benefits from our uniqueness.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. And it sets up this final thought, this kind of lingering question based on everything we've discussed.
Which is?
If our identity is always growing, always changing based on our experiences and choices, then it raises this really interesting question. Where does my individual identity stop? And where does my collective identity, my community, my group begin?
Ooh, that boundary line, where me becomes we.
Exactly.
But
when does my story become part of a larger story? That's something to chew on.
It really is that connection point, that overlap between the individual and the group. That's maybe something to pay attention to this week. Notice how your unique self shows up in the groups you're part of. Great closing thought. Go out there, observe those connections, think about your own amazing, complex identity. Thanks for diving deep with us today.